Chapter 25 The Battle of Polaris. June 28th, 2086. The battleship Charlemagne was racing back to Earth, making maximum range hyperspace jumps as she went. During these jumps, Inez spent long hours at a time sleeping inside one of the many lead-lined radiation shelters, as modern FTL systems would flood the ship with lethal gamma radiation. The shelters were warmer and more comfy than she expected, but that was probably because each one contained almost 100 crew members, each one producing heat. Inez would wrap herself in a blanket and wait out each jump in silence, dreaming about the sandy beaches of the Florida coastline and trying not to guess what her mother wanted to do with the hyperspace core stolen from Alraki. 2 days before her birthday, Inez was sleeping away yet another hyperspace jump in the shelter, this time dreaming about a particularly blissful encounter with Adam Barter in a dark room that happened a few days ago. Inez was just getting to the best part of the dream when she was suddenly rattled awake by a loud clang. The entire ship lurched violently, and Inez was torn out of her dream and back into reality. The radiation shelter was filled with screaming as the lights suddenly went out. A moment later, a flickering wall of purple light passed through the shelter as the Charlemagne fell out of hyperspace. Nobody waited for the all clear, as it was painfully obvious that something had gone horribly wrong. Inez followed her shipmates out of the shelter and started trying to make her way down to the hangar to rejoin Adam and his team, but Rafi Bakir caught her in the hallway. "You're needed on the bridge, Commander," Rafi told her. Inez followed Rafi, moving up from the lower decks to the command level. As she went, Inez realized the ship was actually in serious trouble. On Deck 3, the hallways were filled with smoke, as someone was shouting about firefighters being on the way. Deck 2 was in worse shape. Part of the ceiling had caved in, and Inez saw damage control teams frantically trying to dig a person out of the wreckage. Then, she and Rafi reached the bridge, where Captain Mubarak was trying to control the chaos. "We have fires across decks 3 through 7, Mubarak was saying. "Deck 5 is venting to space." "No word from hyperspace control. Have we been hit?" "No, sir," replied the central officer. "Definitely not a weapon strike. Telemetry data suggests an internal explosion centered in the hyperspace module." "Roger that," Mubarak said. He ran over to one of the computer workstations and tapped the touchscreen, searching for new information about whatever disaster had just struck the ship. "Understood," Mubarak said. Then he read the damage report aloud. "Hyperspace module destroyed. Starboard ion cannon is breaking up. Maneuvering thrusters crippled." What the hell happened?" The chief petty officer raced past Inez and delivered his report. "Sir, it looks like some kind of EM pulse ruptured the coolant lines leading to the nuclear power plant. Nuclear fuel is leaking onto Deck 4, and we've got a major coolant leak in the plant itself." "Son of a sectoid, we've got a saboteur aboard!" Rafi gasped. But the nightmare was not over yet. One of the officers working the sensors manager waved her hand frantically to get the captain's attention. "Alert!" she yelled. "Alert! We've got multiple inbound hyperspace signatures!" Inez sprang into action. She remembered her training and bounded over to the sensors manager, looking at the three-dimensional hologram of the surrounding region of space. She took a quick glance at the hyperspace signatures, deciphered their meaning, and then turned to Captain Mubarak. "Those are Higaran signatures," Inez reported. Captain Mubarak's eyes went wide. "Holy Jericho!" he breathed. "This is a trap!" Mubarak rounded on Rafi. "Find that saboteur!" the captain ordered. "We can't let the Higarans have their man back." "What should I do when I find them?" Rafi asked. "Put them off the ship," Mubarak replied darkly. Then he addressed Inez. "Commander Espinosa, our helmsman got killed in the blast. Can you fly a battleship?" "I've done it in the sim before," Inez replied, trying to inject her voice with some confidence. "Give me the stick, sir." As Inez took her place at the helm, there was a sudden crackling sound from the intercom speakers. A moment later, a voice projected itself into the ship. "Human warship Charlemagne. This is the Kith Santal warship Ashoka. We have you surrounded and at a disadvantage. Power down your drive and weapons now. Prepare to be boarded and to surrender any data, personnel, or technology we require. This is your only warning. Stop now, or we will open fire. Helm! Engines ahead flank! Captain Mubarak ordered. Bring the weapons online and polarize the hull. Comms, send a distress signal to Earth. Get somebody here, now! Inez went to work at the helm. She swung the Charlemagne around and sent the ship pelting toward a distant point of yellow light. Keeping one eye on the sensors, she called out a sighting. Sir, Hagaran Dreadnought, dead ahead! Evasive maneuvers, Mubarak ordered. Inez grabbed the joystick in her left hand and the control column in her right. She commanded a hard turn, and as the vessel lurched into motion, Inez swore out loud. Aw shit, she's got a fat ass! Charlemagne was larger and far less nimble than her own Stellaris. Swerving wildly through space, the battleship started moving around the side of the oncoming dreadnought. But before Inez could complete the maneuver, the enemy took action. A shimmering beam of white light shot out from a silver dome on the ventral side of the dreadnought, stopping about a kilometer in front of the vessel as though it was hitting an invisible wall. The beam rotated around the ship counterclockwise, and when it completed one trip around the dreadnought, it vanished. A moment later, the Charlemagne was hit by an invisible force and went reeling in the opposite direction. Damn it, they have repulsor cannons! Inez shouted. Everyone hold on! This is going to be a rough ride! One by one, 4 more dreadnoughts began to close in on the Charlemagne from all sides. Each time the battleship tried to flee in one direction, a blast from a repulsor sent her flying the opposite way. Captain Mubarak quickly ran out of patience. Fire on those dreadnoughts! He shouted. While the Charlemagne opened fire with her main turrets and ion cannons, another scene was playing out deep inside of her hold. Rafi and his team of space rangers were on their way to the spot where the hyperspace module used to be, to start hunting the saboteur who destroyed it. Rafi's subordinate pointed his laser rifle around a corner in the hallway, making sure the coast was clear. Once it was safe to move up, Rafi tapped him on the shoulder and said, Go down to the hangar and make sure the progenitor hyperspace core is secure on its transport ship. We need to be able to move that thing if... Oh, shit! Find cover! 3 men came around the far corner, about 30 feet in front of Rafi and his team. Without hesitation, the unidentified men took aim with plasma pistols and opened fire on the space rangers. Rafi dove into an open doorway just as the gunfight erupted. Drawing his own rifle, he crept through the room, which turned out to be a storage space for spare parts. Listening for the sounds of gunfire through the walls, Rafi paused when he drew level with a bare stretch of metal that vibrated from intense weapon fire on the other side. Rafi raised his laser rifle and put the selector switch on full auto. Pausing just long enough to line up his weapon with the sound of gunfire, he pulled and held the trigger down until the laser rifle overheated. Smoke trailed up from dozens of holes burned into the wall, and from the other side, there was only the sound of people groaning in pain. Out of the 3 initial hostiles, Rafi shot 2 through the wall, and now they were laying wounded on the floor. The final man escaped by the time Rafi knelt down by the wounded combatants. While his men held them down, Rafi rifled through their pockets and found incriminating evidence. This is a high-gain radio, Rafi spoke as he examined each item. And here we've got X4 plastic explosives, kit full of burglar's tools. Yeah. Lieutenant, call the bridge and tell them we found our saboteurs. One of the other space rangers looked very confused. But these are humans. I thought these guys were going to be Higarans. One of the wounded saboteurs coughed out some blood and then said angrily, What the hell, dude? Why would we be Higarans? Rafi shuddered with a sense of alarm. Then he drew a knife and started cutting pieces of the saboteur's outfit off. Everyone looked confused until Rafi pointed at the second wounded man and said, Check him for tattoos. Rafi knew exactly what he was looking for, so it was only a matter of seconds before he found it. Both of the wounded saboteurs had a stylized bird tattooed on their left arms. "Grey Phoenix," Rafi said. "Oh, you've got to be kidding me! How many of you were on my ship?" The two members of Grey Phoenix gave Rafi a pair of evil smiles, and their reply was both an answer and a taunt. Just enough to give you a real headache. Meanwhile, up on the bridge, Inez spotted an opening. There was a gap in between two of the Higaran dreadnoughts, just wide enough that their repulsor fields did not overlap. Without waiting for an order from Captain Mubarak, Inez took control of the maneuvering thrusters and pointed the Charlemagne toward its new escape route. At her command, the battleship screamed towards the gap, towards freedom. "We're gonna make it!" Mubarak yelled from the captain's station. "Everyone hang on!" Inez typed out a message on her console, ordering the ship's engines to be pushed past her limit. She was expecting a response from the engineering deck, maybe something along the lines of, "I'm doing the best I can down here," or something like that. But if there was a reply, Inez never saw it. A very loud klaxon screamed and nearly deafened Inez, causing panicked yells all across the bridge. A moment later, a computerized voice declared, "Alert! Siege cannon fire detected!" Inez looked over to the sensors manager, trying to see what direction it was coming from, but the astrogation officer had the answer. He pointed out the forward window and said, "Dead ahead! It's coming right at us!" The Ashoka was directly in front of the Charlemagne, and a brilliant white sphere was quickly traveling the distance between the two warships, racing towards the latter. "Hard to port!" Captain Mubarak screamed. "All engines back emergency!" Inez rammed the thruster controls with one hand and started maneuvering with the other. Desperately, she tried to turn the ship, but it was too late. The plasma sphere hit the Charlemagne and imploded. Aboard the Ashoka, Himawari and her companions gasped as they witnessed the conflagration. The plasma sphere detonated and wrought instant destruction. The Charlemagne was pulverized as her armor evaporated and the vulnerable superstructure was shredded. All four of the battleship's gun turrets were blown clear off and spun into space. In moments, the mighty battleship had lost all but one of its main weapons, all of its starboard armor, and according to scans, almost 1/4 of the crew had been killed as well. Amako let out an impressed whistle. "It's been a while since you've had to do that," he said. "I remember most ships would just surrender before we ever even thought about using the big gun. Nice to know it still works." Runhan only had eyes for her wife, and in fact, she had an expression on her face that suggested Runhan would melt into putty if Hali so much as looked at her. Himawari and Amako understood why. In this moment, Hali Mihaka was radiating power and determination. She was very much the kind of person who should not be crossed. With a dramatic swish of her cloak, Hali started to give orders. "Deploy boarding parties and secure the Charlemagne," Hali commanded. "I want the hyperspace core they stole from Iraqi. I also want weapons checks. Find out who hit their hyperspace module in the beginning. That was a damn lucky shot." Standing together in the back of the bridge, Chris and Randall raised their eyebrows. "Honestly, I could have sworn the enemy ship blew up from the inside," Randall whispered to Chris. "That's what it looked like to me." "I saw the same thing," Chris told him. "Maybe it malfunctioned, or perhaps there's a saboteur." Meanwhile, all 6 vessels in Hali's fleet surrounded and started to move in on the now disabled Charlemagne. The Ashoka held off, maintaining a distance of about 20 kilometers and keeping her siege cannon trained on the battleship. Himawari stayed close to Amako, who translated everything into sign language so she could keep up. One of the dreadnoughts, the Capizzi, drew close to the Charlemagne and started maneuvering towards her last remaining docking port. That was when all hell broke loose. "Captain!" a Higaran crew member called out. "We've got a hyperspace signature! 4 human warships are materializing!" And then a message was broadcasted for all to hear. "Attention, Charlemagne! This is the United Nations warship Stellaris. We have answered your distress call." Aboard the Charlemagne, Inez spotted the Stellaris and screamed for joy. It was her ship! She quickly asked the comms officer to raise the Stellaris. The voice of Central Officer Dotsenko replied, "Good to see you're alive, Commander Espinosa," Dotsenko said. "I'll keep the seat warm for you, shall I?" 4 UN starships dropped out of hyperspace about 50 kilometers away from the disabled Charlemagne. Chris immediately recognized 3 of them: the French carrier Jeanne d'Arc, British battleship Enterprise, and the Singaporean destroyer Vengeance were all vessels he'd seen before. But Chris had never heard of a vessel called Stellaris. Chris tried to shout a word of warning to Hali, but he ran out of time. The human fleet came out of hyperspace, guns blazing. "Emergency evasive!" Hali ordered. "Redeploy the fleet and push the newcomers back." As the 2 fleets engaged one another, the Enterprise broke formation and intercepted Ashoka. The hulking mothership was too slow to get away, and the Ashoka was raked with ion beams from bow to stern. Himawari screamed as the vessel shuddered under her feet. A moment later, the Enterprise came back and launched another strafing run. Mass driver rounds and ion beams hit the upper deck, causing the bridge to shake while sparks fell from the ceiling. "We've been hit!" Runhan yelled. "Someone get me a damage report!" One more time, the Enterprise bore down on Hali's flagship. This time, Himawari and her friends were thrown to the floor by vicious weapon strikes. Meanwhile, the Charlemagne was caught in the crossfire. On her bridge, confusion was slowly receding as the crew recovered. The air smelled of carbon as fire extinguishers were deployed and smoke filtered out of the room. Inez had been thrown out of her seat and halfway across the bridge by the impact, and after testing her limbs for injury, she returned to the helm. "We have hull breaches across all decks," said the chief of the watch. "All 4 of our gun turrets are gone, and we've lost an ion cannon. All starboard armor is gone, maneuvering thrusters are compromised, decks 2 through 8 are venting to space." "Engineering, report!" Captain Mubarak called out. A voice came over the intercom. "Mubarak!" the chief engineer called out. "The nuclear power plant took a big hit. All of our coolant is venting to space, and I don't want to be around when this thing starts heating up." "How much time do we have?" 45 minutes if we don't take any more hits." At that moment, the entire ship rattled violently. You'd better make that 30, the engineer concluded. "Captain," Inez called out, "the Jeanne d'Arc just accidentally shot us. We need to move out of the line of fire." "No, sir," the chief of the watch cut across Inez. "The Enterprise is under heavy attack." "We have 1 good ion cannon left. Let's use it," Mubarak ordered. "Espinosa, come about and put those damn Higarans in our firing arc." Inez throttled down the engines and put the Charlemagne into a sharp turn. This movement caught the attention of 2 Higaran ships. The Fiskire and Amida turned to engage. Inez saw them and started to lay in an evasive maneuver, but stopped when both dreadnoughts veered off. The Vengeance shot past Charlemagne like a bullet from a gun, firing her own weapons at the Higarans. As it went by, the 2 ships established communications. "Vengeance calling Charlemagne," said a familiar voice. "I swear to Jericho, if you broke my new hyperspace core, I will spacewalk over there and kill you myself." Inez balked. "Mom?" she said aloud. "Is that you?" "Is that Nezzy?" Scarlett Freeman replied from her place aboard the Vengeance. "Nezzy, are you flying the Char?" "Yeah, I'm at the helm," Inez answered. "And don't call me Nezzy. We need some help down here." "You're telling me," Scarlett said. "From where I'm sitting, it looks like you're flying half a ship. Hold tight, we'll get these Higarans off you." Flying in formation, Vengeance and Charlemagne rejoined the fight, pouring weapons fire into the Higarans. Aboard the Ashoka, Ali finally ran out of patience. "I've had enough of this," she declared. "You, humans! Which one of those ships is the least defended?" She pointed at Himawari, Chris, and Randall. All three of them went wide-eyed at the sudden request. Chris grabbed the other two and huddled up. "Hang on," he said. "Do we really want to do this? Right now, we're just asking her for help and shelter and all that good stuff. If we tell her how to fight our own people..." "You don't need to spell it out," Randall said. "We'll be traitors, aiding the enemy." "Speak for yourselves," Himawari signed. "ISO says I'm a traitor already, but at least I know I'm on the side fighting against the paradox, fighting for our futures." Himawari broke out of the huddle and started moving toward Hali, ignoring Chris and Randall's attempts to stop her. Himawari grabbed Hali by the shoulder and turned her around, pointing out of the main window towards the battle playing out. Speaking in poor, halting English, Himawari said, "That is a carrier. Little guns, thin sides." Ali gave Himawari a surprised look. Whoa. I honestly didn't think you could speak," Ali confessed. "I am deaf, not dumb," Himawari admonished her. Ali nodded, then gave new orders to her crew. "All right, boys, let's send those humans a message. Concentrate all fire on the Jeanne d'Arc." "Yes, ma'am," Runhan replied from the weapons control station. "Charging siege cannon now. Quantum capacitors at 50%. All 6 Higaran vessels turned away from the remainder of the human fleet, ignoring the Enterprise, Charlemagne, Stellaris, and Vengeance to focus their efforts on a single target. The Jeanne d'Arc never stood a chance. The French carrier was first pummeled by a wave of missiles fired from the dreadnoughts, and then she was raked by ion beams, cutting her armor into chunks. By the time the Higarans got close enough to fire energy cannons, the carrier was already a wreck. Once the dreadnoughts finished their work, they all broke formation and flew away, just as Ahsoka moved into the kill position. "Shot away!" Runhan announced. With a blast that made the entire mothership rattle, the siege cannon fired another shot. The plasmasphere rocketed away. There was a blinding flash of light, and nothing remained of the Jeanne d'Arc, aside from scraps of wire and shredded metal. Back on the Charlemagne, Inez let out a horrified scream as she witnessed the destruction of the Jeanne d'Arc. Swinging the helm violently, Inez turned the Charlemagne until it was facing Ashoka. "We're lined up," Captain Mubarak said. "Fire the ion cannon!" A beam of blue light, no wider than a hair but brighter than the hottest star, shot from the battleship and connected with the Ashoka, striking squarely on the weapons module just behind the siege cannon. A colossal explosion tore through the Ashoka as her weapons module vanished in a magnificent fireball. A moment later, caught by the forces of the blast, the siege cannon detached from Ashoka and drifted away into space. The mothership's engine abruptly shut down, and the massive vessel began to drift. Charlemagne had gotten a lucky hit, and now Ashoka was disabled. Cheers went up all across the Charlemagne, but the celebration was short-lived as Inez looked at the sensors manager and cried out, "Incoming! We've got multiple capital ship signatures in strike formations on rapid attack vectors!" She pointed at the sensors manager, where at least 24 new starships could be seen emerging from hyperspace. And it was very clear that these were not friendly vessels. A mixed force of Partogan, Ashurian, Levakian, Vanian, Amadi, Mykor, Kel, Blorg, Skildari, Kelazan, Praku, and Vor warships were diving into the battle. There were cruisers, battleships, and even a Mykor Titan in the fleet. Altogether, Inez counted a total of 29 enemy reinforcements. "It's the Galactic Defense Force," Scarlett said over the radio. "If those attack groups converge on us, we'll be wiped out. It's time to bug out. All ships, lock onto my hyperspace signature and prepare to wake jump behind the Vengeance." On the bridge of the Charlemagne, Inez sounded the hyperspace alert. "Everyone to your shelters!" she ordered. "We're jumping now! Go, go, go!" The bridge was evacuated. As the Charlemagne and her allies prepared to escape, the Higaran warships continued to pummel the now motionless warships. The whole ship rattled and shook like a toy in the hands of a small child as Inez threw herself into the lead-lined shelter before slamming the door shut behind her. Flying at the head of the formation, the Vengeance activated her hyperspace module, and the quantum wave front swept backwards, dragging the Vengeance, Solaris, Enterprise, and Charlemagne into hyperspace. Aboard the Ashoka, Hali screamed in fury, but she never lost a beat. She rounded on her own astronavigation officer and said, "Track them! Calculate every possible destination along their last known trajectory." "What about the GDF?" Amako said, gesturing to the newly arrived fleet. "They're right here. Shouldn't we talk to them?" "Do they have a hyperspace core?" Hali retorted. "No? Then they've got nothing I want. All ships, return for docking and prepare for hyperspace.